President Buhari reassures Nigerians that the APC-led administration is committed to playing by the rules as other APC leaders congratulate Ondo State Governor-elect.
Nigerian Air Force to restructure operational units in the Northeast.
Thousand female internally displaced persons in Borno State empowered to be self-reliant.
And today on Good Morning Nigeria, we focus on the outcome of the Ondo governorship election, plus the legacy of Cuba's Fidel Castro.
All right, the governorship election in Ondo State has come and gone, and a winner has emerged, and that is in the person of Rotimi Akeredolu of the All Progressives Congress, APC. He won with 244,842 votes.
Now, Ayitayo Jagede of the PDP came second with some 150,000 votes, while Olushola Oke of the AD scored from 126,889 votes to come third. Akeredolu, a senior advocate of Nigeria and former president of the Nigerian Bar Association, will therefore take over from outgoing governor of the state, that's Olusegun Mimiko, who is of the People's Democratic Party.
And Kingsley, if you can recall very well, these are issues that we've had to talk about that characterized the build-up to this election. They were full of dramas, twists, and intrigues. For instance, the first runner-up, Mr. Ayitayo Jagede of the PDP, had a troubled campaign and was not officially declared candidate by INEC until Wednesday, and that's less than 3 days to the election after the court ruling.
That's right. There was indeed a troubled campaign for the PDP candidate. But a post-election statement by the Nigeria Civil Society Situation Room on the governorship election acknowledges the full participation of all the political parties in the election and also commended them for adhering to the peace accord they had entered into before the elections, while also praising the electorate who conducted themselves peacefully during the polls.
And today we shall be doing a post-mortem of the election. Also on Friday, that's early hours of Saturday, the death occurred of Fidel Castro, a man who described as a titan of the Cold War who defied the American presidents, a tireless defender of the poor, and remains the icon of a revolution for many Cubans.
Well, Fidel Castro was 90 years old, and in that were being sent to him with all kinds of poisonous materials, but he survived all of those things and then proceeded, of course, to establish, his authority over Cuba and Cubans. But in particular, and I'm sure our guests will also speak to that, Africa, and indeed Southern Africa, should have very fond memories of Cuba under Fidel Castro. He did play a critical role in the liberation struggle towards the end in Southern Africa. That was in the late 80s as well as the early 90s, and the consequences of all of those. So those are some of the items we shall be taking a look at in terms of evaluating the legacy of Fidel Castro. My name is Kingsley Osadolo, and on that note, I welcome you to this edition of Good Morning Nigeria.
And I'm Rhoda Albo. I join Kingsley in welcoming you to this edition of the program. And we are live on Africa's largest TV network, the NTA. We'll have on the program today our usual companion segments. So we've got business, we've got sports, entertainment, and of course foreign news. But first, let's do the news first by joining Lydia Samson, who is in the newsroom. Lydia, good morning. I hope you had a very great weekend.
Great weekend, but at work. I was working even until yesterday. I hope you and Kingsley had a wonderful weekend too, and good morning.
Well, we had our weekend separately, so
I know that. Good morning and welcome to the news. President Muhammadu Buhari has reassured Nigerians that the APC-led administration under his watch is committed to playing by the rules, and there will be no let-up until Nigerians see the great nation of their dreams in all spheres of national development. The president stated this while congratulating the governor-elect of Ondo State, Chief Oluwarotimi Akeredolu, Senior Advocate of Nigeria of the All Progressives Congress APC, on his well-deserved victory in the Saturday, November 26 governorship election in the state. President Buhari, in a statement by the Special Advisor on Media and Publicity, also congratulates the chairman of the APC, Chief John Oyegun, the chairman of the campaign committee, Governor Simon Lalong of Plateau State, and all party faithfuls who put in their best and braved the odds to ensure a successful outing for the flag bearer. The president also rejoices with the good people of Ondo State who aligned with his own belief that Chief Rotimi Akeredolu, with his pedigree, possesses the quality to transform the state into the Ondo of their dreams. While commending INEC, security agencies, and voters for peaceful conduct, President Buhari calls on other contestants in the election to see the triumph of Chief Akeredolu as the wish of God and enjoins them to work together with him to make the state a truly progressive and economically prosperous one for all. As the governor-elect prepares to assemble his team and bring the much that the party is still loved by Nigerians, the speaker urged all stakeholders to come together and ensure that the incoming APC government in Ondo delivers on the mandate given by the people in line with the party's manifesto. The national chairman of the All Progressives Congress, Chief John Oyegun, has congratulated the party's Ondo State governorship election candidate and running mate, Rotimi Akeredolu, Senior Advocate of Nigeria, and Agboola Ajayi on their landslide election victory. In a message issued by his spokesperson on behalf of the APC National Working Committee, Oyegun, while thanking the Ondo electorate for voting for the party, also expressed gratitude to the good people of Ondo State for their impressive turnout and peaceful conduct during the exercise. The APC national chairman equally thanked President Muhammadu Buhari and other party leaders for their invaluable support towards winning the Ondo governorship election. He called for calm and appealed to the opposition parties and their candidates to accept defeat in good faith. Oyegun described the election as keenly contested, saying that the Ondo electorate have voted for the candidate with a proven track record of performance who will bring about the kind, focused leadership and multifaceted development which the state deserves. The party assured Ondo people that the governor-elect will deliver on his expectation. The chairman added that the outcome of the Ondo governorship election demonstrates the confidence and trust by Nigerians in the overall leadership of President Muhammadu Buhari's APC-led administration. The Nigerian Air Force says it is embarking on restructuring of its operational units in the Northeast to be more proactive and to further enhance its mandate of protecting the country's territorial integrity. Chief of Air Staff Air Marshal Sadiq Abubakar said this is a fallout of threat analysis conducted by the Air Force.
The ATR is a surveillance aircraft, and we have other surveillance airplanes that we are switching over from one sector of the country to the other. So far, I think we are doing very well in terms of surveillance. Like I said, we don't have all that we need, but what we have so far and the way we are applying it, we are getting the best out of it.
The Minister of Agriculture and Rural Development, Audu Ogbe, has assured farmers across the country of government's commitment to financing the provision of quality input for rapid development in the sector. The minister stated this while engaging members of the Agro Dealers Association of Nigeria in Abuja.
What is important is input. That's why no government will want to toy with the input sector. So I still want to assure you to be patient and that we are doing all our. We don't just want to send anything and to come back again. But the dry season, I'm assuring you, we shall out today. And as soon as we get to finance.
The federal government has re-emphasized its commitment to strengthening the creative industry in Nigeria. This is coming on the heels of the viability the industry beholds as a potential revenue earner for the nation and youth engagement venture. This is the submission of the Minister of Information and Culture, Lai Mohammed, at an event in Lagos.
The important thing is to see how the creative industry is now moving from the margins to become one of the pillars of our economy. As
peace gradually returns to the Northeast, fast-track the process that will improve quality of education and guarantee the lives of people of the state. The state governor, Alhaji Abubakar Sani Bello, stated this in a message to the 31st State Annual Quranic Recitation Competition hosted by Suleja Emirate.
We identified education as one of the cardinal priorities, as very key to the socio-economic development of the state.
We just have to do all we can to ensure we are resilient, supportive of all of our political leaders, especially the president himself, in his effort to ensure that things are corrected.
That's the news for now. Good morning, Nigeria. We'll continue with Kinsley and Ruda after the break.
If you hear a bomb explosion or gunshots of an active shooter, that might be a terror attack. At such times, always remember 3 action words. Run, hide, report. Don't try to run towards the terror scene to save the situation, because there might be a second bomb blast or another attack. Run far away and take cover. Make sure you are safe first. Yes, it is in our nature to sympathize over the hurt, but remember, only trained personnel can help in such situations. When in a secured environment, promptly call relevant authorities and help will come. For anonymous reporting, call 09630-3250-5 or 0813-2222-106. If you see something, say something. Nigeria unite against terrorism. This message is brought to you by the Federal Ministry of Information and Culture.
NTA Properties Investment Company Limited, a subsidiary of the Nigerian Television Authority, specializes in creating comfort in all areas of life, such as real estate investments, that is, land, houses, and office spaces, mast leasing, savings and loan scheme, household items and car loans, and so much more. Other information and entertainment services include Property in Style, a TV program that airs on the network service of the NTA, and also Property Connect, a nationwide magazine. Our priority is to bridge poverty gaps and sustain quality welfare of our clients. Partner with us and watch us help you grow. Pay us a visit today at the NTA headquarters permanent site, Area 11 Garki, Abuja, or our Lagos office at number 15 Awolowo Road, Ikoyi, Lagos. For more information, visit our website on www.ntaproperties.com.ng, or you can email us on ntapeak2000@yahoo.com. Call us on 080-2316-3474 or 080-6939-5185 or 070-3189-0555. NTA Properties Investment Company Limited, the much needed help at your doorstep.
All right, welcome back. If you've just joined us, you're watching Good Morning Nigeria on Africa's largest TV network, the NTA. Now let's talk business. Federal government assures policies are on track to reflate the economy, and the Nigerian stock exchange market extends weekly losses. Let's get more details from Leah Katum Babatunde.
The federal government has so far injected 800 billion naira into the Nigerian economy as capital expenditure. Accountant General of the Federation, Ahmed Idris, in an interview with NTA Business News in Abuja, said the latest tranche of budgetary release is to upscale viable activities. Security is not addressed now. At an event on the new internationally agreed 2030 Sustainable Development Agenda, the UN Secretary Assembly President flags causes for concern over the impact brought by climate change.
You need think only of the fact that while the Paris Agreement calls for a 1.5 to a 2-degree world, we are currently still heading towards a 3 to 4 degree world. And we do not know that civilization, as we know it, can continue to function at those 3 to 4 degree levels.
In addition to climate change, other pressing issues the agenda aims to tackle include population growth, poverty and inequality, environmental degradation, and natural disasters which are driving conflict, migration and hunger and malnutrition. FAO Director General Jose Graziano da Silva, World Food Program Executive Director Ethelene Cousin, and Perrine Sitange, Associate Vice President of the International Fund for Agricultural Development, IFAD, stressed stressed the strong partnership that exists between the Rome-based UN food agencies to support countries in achieving the 2030 development agenda. Stocks continued to tumble in the stock market, with equities only advancing slightly after the MPC maintained status quo in the last meeting for the year. The gains were short-lived. Let's take a look at latest figures from the NSE. With business news, I'm Lekating Babatunde.
All right, thank you very much there, Leah Katumba Babatunde, for the business package on Good Morning Nigeria. Next for us now is a review of the headlines in some of today's newspapers.
All right, our newspaper reviewer, Bayo Atoyibi, is already seated here in the studio with us this morning. Bayo, good morning.
Good morning,
I hope you had a great weekend.
To opposition, accept defeat in good faith. And poll test of party's resilience. That's attributed to President Muhammadu Buhari. And similarly, for the Daily Trust newspaper, is the lead story with a double-decker headline: How APC's Akeredolu emerged Ondo governor-elect. Buhari, Tinubu, and others congratulate winner. And you can see there are two sidebars there indicating the number of votes scored by the three leading candidates in the election, as well as, of course, the number of registered voters, accredited voters, rejected votes, and the failure rate of the card readers.
All right, so now the blueprint. On the blueprint, same story also leads. Akeredolu Ondo governor-elect snubs Tinubu. Akeredolu Ondo governor-elect snubs Tinubu with three riders there. Thanks Buhari, Oyegun, and loyal governors. Time for reconciliation, says APC chair Tinubu. Observers laud INEC and Fayoshe kicks, and the picture story there is that of the governor-elect celebrating with his wife. And on the Nigerian pilots, it's quite different. The pilot leads this way: 50 billion naira diverted from NAS allocation, says Jubri. 50 billion naira diverted from NAS allocation, says Jubri. That's on page 4. And now let's quickly move over to the Daily Times. The Daily Times also doesn't lead with that's the story of the election, but then it's just on the side there, just beside that's the nameplate, and that's Akeredolu wins Ondo governorship election. Akeredolu wins Ondo state governorship election. But the lead story on the Daily Times this morning: body for recovered loots on the way, says Sage. Body for recovered loots on the way, says Sage. With riders' profits from assets to be returned to cleared suspects. Special court for corruption also coming. 160 lawyers trained on effective prosecution. Committee to monitor ongoing corruption cases established. Those are the lead stories on the dailies that I have. All right, Bayo, let's get your views on this.
Yes, I agree with you. Most of the papers are still harping on the Ondo election story. And Rotimi Akeredolu, having pulled 244,842 as the highest vote, was declared winner by Professor Abdul Ghani Ambali, the Vice Chancellor of the University of Ilorin, who was the Chief Returning Officer. Governor-elect Akeredolu has called upon all to come together with the intention of working and moving this state forward. President Muhammadu Buhari had already congratulated Mr. Akeredolu, and also the chairman of APC, as well as Governor Lalong, who was headed the party machinery for the election. Governor Aminu Waziri Tambuwal has advised that the governor-elect should be the father to all. Transition Monitoring Group had commended INEC and observed that there were some minor challenges, particularly with voter card registration and particularly the most of the obstacles were not significant as to affect the outcome of the election. Governor Ayodele Fayose, that you mentioned there, he says yes, INEC rigged Ondo election in advance because PDP had contested the election with his hands tied by INEC's action. But meanwhile, some observers too have looked at the contestants in the Ondo election and observed that Rotimi Akeredolu, who won, is a senior advocate of Nigeria, and he was called to the bar in 1978. His immediate runners of Tayo Jegede, also a lawyer, senior advocate of Nigeria, was called to the bar in 1984. The third candidate is Olushola Oke, who also was called to the bar in 1987. And guess what they are saying? They said, kudos to the people of Ondo for respecting seniority at the bar.
All right, thank you very much, Baya. All right, let's move on now to other stories. I'll begin with the blueprint, just below the nameplate there. PTDA discovers 9,000 ghost pensioners, retains 222,000. That story is on page 6 of the blueprint. And just below the picture story, you see the Nigerian military takeover, says Clark. That's on page 17. Serap writes King Dogara on 500 billion naira running cost. That's on page 13. Then on page 16, federal government wants agencies against core members' rejection. 600 Nigerians have died in fire market, says the Federal Fire Service. That's on page 8. And on page 5, that's the story I saw during the weekend. It says Trump won't disrupt U.S.-Nigeria relations. Trump won't disrupt U.S.-Nigeria relations. Those are the stories on the front page of the blueprint this morning. All right, Kingsley.
Well, let's return to People's Daily. People's Daily, below the name flag. You have the window of 4 headlines. NLC rejects 200 million naira pension for Oshomole. Details on page 6. And Air-5 plus to suspend Shehu Sani, APC World Chair alleges.
Fidel Alejandro Castro Ruz, the man who took power in 1959, ruled for 49 years, and voluntarily relinquished power to his brother Raul Castro in 2008. He was cremated at a private ceremony on Saturday. He was aged 90. He created a one-party state at the doorstep of the United States, and he transformed Cuba from a playground of what was described as American capitalism to a symbol that showed resistance to capitalism. He also faked off invasion of the Bay of Pigs in 1961. In fact, there was also a 13-day showdown between the United States and with the support of USSR, particularly, that almost led to a nuclear war. He survived countless assassinations, and he also was plagued by intestinal ailment, which led to his leaving power in 2006. He swept capitalism away and brought in schools and hospitals to the poor in Cuba. He was particularly admired in Latin America and many African countries. You'll recall that Cuban troops were sent to Africa. Many of them fought in support of revolutionary people fighting for independence, particularly in Angola and some other Southern Africa countries. He will be cremated he has been cremated, but he will be honored with a state funeral on December 4th.
All right. The Nigerian pilot now. On the Nigerian pilot below the nameplates, Anani quits partisan politics, rally support for Buhari. Anani quits partisan politics, rally support for Buhari. And PDP protest withdrawal of weekly security aids ahead of rerun polls. PDP protest withdrawal of weekly security aids ahead of rerun polls. And below the picture story, I'll take just those stories at the foot of the paper. First, on page 6, telecoms contribute 1.398 trillion naira to GDP in the third quarter, says NCC. Political interference worked against NNPC in the past, says El-Rufai. And stay focused, Sultan tells Army, U.S.-Nigeria's relation intact, says Minister. And on page 10, rape cases increase in Niger State. Rape cases increase in Niger State, says police.
All right, let me just take a look at the leadership newspaper again. There's a headline, or two headlines there that we would like to take from the front page. Insecurity. Insurance firms impose 2.3 trillion naira premium on Nigeria-bound ships. Insurance firms impose 2.3 trillion naira premium on Nigeria-bound ships. And below that, Islamic Development Bank to invest $35 million in Jigawa. The story is in greater detail on page 27. And then towards the foot of the front page says Justice Ajuma Gobia and ex-EFCC prosecutor Obla for bribery trial today. That's on page 7.
Just two quick stories. There's 50 billion allegedly diverted from the National Assembly by alleged by Abdulmumin Jibrin, and Syria has followed up with a freedom of information, enforcing freedom of information right, to ask the Senate President and the Speaker of the House of Representatives to provide information about the 500 billion budget of the National Assembly. Meanwhile, there was a story that wrote at Obasanjo, late Umar Musa Yaradua, and Dr. Goodluck Jonathan. Those were evidences of his fixing of the presidents.
Well, that's recent history. He was also involved in the Second Republic.
Yes.
Yes, in fact, he was chairman of the NPN in Old Bender State. As chairman, of course, he had to be involved in the elections that took place at the time. Because at the time, it was President Shehu Shagari who won his re-election in 1983 before the Second Republic was truncated. Baya Toibe, we'd like to thank you for being with us today. See you again tomorrow.
Thank you. Tomorrow will be another day.
All right, we'll take a short break now. When we return, we are dealing with two issues today: the outcome of the Ondo governorship election, plus the legacy of Cuba's Fidel Castro.
It's a carnival of change. Abuja Carnival 2016. Theme: the creative industry. Pivot to economic growth. Destination: Abuja Capital City. Date: December 3rd to 6th, 2016. Abuja Carnival, a truly national carnival.
Of NUP scored 159 votes. Oluwasegun Ojiji of PUDC scored 1,096 votes. Eyitayo Jegede San of PDP scored 150,380 votes.
Into the rejected votes of almost 30,000.
Well, yes. I think what it shows is that just about half of those that were registered participated in the election. I would wish that the participation was higher, but if you look at the trend generally, I think there is an improvement. The last Edo governorship election recorded about 30% turnout. This one recorded 35% turnout, but the highest we've had in the past 16 years has been the Osun governorship election, which we conducted before the 2015 general elections, where the turnout was about 54%. I think that globally, the threshold is usually about 50%. So I think we have a lot of work to do. The the election management body, that is INEC, the political parties, civil society, and so on, in mobilizing Nigerians to participate in the process.
Yeah, what's your reaction to the rejected votes? Some 29,600. That's close to 30,000.
Yes.
Was it just a failure of voter education, or the fact, I don't know what happened from your reports?
Yes, generally, when you have that, it's an index of the challenge we have with voided votes. And the voided votes, usually occur as a result of poor voter education in terms of making the voter appreciate the statutory duty to monitor primaries conducted by the political parties. When you have a court order supervening, you have to obey that court order until that court order is set aside by a superior court. And that was what happened in the instance of the PDP candidate. Itayo Jegede emerged as the candidate of the PDP in primaries that we monitored, whereas the other candidate that the High Court said we should recognize, that is Jimo Ibrahim, emerged from primaries that we did not monitor, and in fact we understand took place in a jurisdiction outside the constituency in which he ought to have contested. So there was a challenge with that. But as we were going about with the process, we received the name of Eitayo Jegede, and then on the 14th of October, we now received this court order, ordering INEC to recognize Jimo instead of Jegede. But like I said, when you have that kind of order supervening in the process, in the interim, you have no option than to receive or to obey the court order pending when it is set aside. And thankfully, at the end of the day, the appeal court did that, and we promptly recognized Mr. Eitayo Jegede as the candidate of the PDP.
Just 3 days before the election.
Yes, but don't also forget that the timetable and schedule of activities for that election was issued 6 months ago on the 2nd of March 2016. Part of it is taken away by that distraction. So we must admit that, these court orders also have their own challenges, particularly when they are conflicting. Thankfully, in this case, it wasn't so, and it was resolved ahead of the election.
But then let's look at the issue of card readers again.
Yes.
Card readers failing again, and the question that comes to mind is, when would the issue of card readers failing be resolved? And also too, I'd like you to also speak to this, if it was true or not. One of the candidates, Olushola Oke, also complained. Now that's an AD candidate now, not the PDP or APC, saying that the number of people who had registered, who had voted, who had been registered with the card reader, that is, who had been registered with the card reader, was higher than the number of people that had voted.
No, I don't think it is correct. What I know is that we had a total of 11 smart card readers that malfunctioned, but there were also cases in which the card readers did not capture the biometrics of certain individuals, and we had to resort to the incident form. And I recall particularly the case of the PDP candidate. We had started using the smart card reader to accredit voters in the polling unit in which he, cast his vote, and suddenly the card readers, smart card readers stopped working, as a result of which hackings take place when machines are on the internet, but because it's easy to hack into the internet. But the smart card reader does not, for now, we don't use it on the internet, so it's not susceptible to that. But I think that we need to work on the software to improve its capacity to capture the fingerprints of those who might have some impairment or some challenges with their fingerprints. What we discovered right from 2015 is that there are certain categories of Nigerians that have challenges with their fingerprints being captured. Either before the elections, their fingers are oily, or the prints themselves are impaired one way or the other. And I think that we looked at this earlier on and recognize that the way to go is to go back and look at that software and to improve the intensity of that software to capture the biometrics of voters who might have these challenges.
Well, I'm sure that this is a question that you've been asked on a number of occasions, and I want to repeat it here. What ultimately is the utility of the incident forms? Because one of the fallback options that INEC sold in utilizing the card reader was to say, look, in the event of the failure of the card reader, you have resort to the incident forms. But in the various cases that we have had, the adjudication of our election petitions, the incident forms would appear not to have played any significant evidentiary role.
Well, I think that as a backup, the incident form has played a role because it gives credibility to the process. When your biometrics are not captured, you know that the incident form will be used and it is recorded. And in fact, even though we use the smart card reader, you would also observe that in each of the polling units, we have the manual register itself. And in spite of the fact that we use the smart card reader to verify and authenticate the voter, we still fall back on the manual register. Before you vote, your name on the manual register must also be ticked. So I think that the incident form and the manual register complement the work of converge and they wreak havoc. So general elections are generally easier to conduct in terms of security, in terms of the capacity of people who do bad to intervene in the process. But I always want to say that our elections work in progress. By and by, as people develop confidence in the process, we are likely to have less and less deployment of security agents. But I think that what has so far brought significant improvement in terms of the two recent governorship elections we've conducted is that the security agencies themselves have deliberately revised the architecture for securing the environment for the election. In time past, what used to happen is that in the immediate polling unit, you have a ring made up of police men who are unarmed, and then you have another second concentric ring where also they are not armed. But this time around, we have a second ring that's armed, and we also have an intervention unit at the ward level, so that once they receive any report of violence taking place, they intervene. And I think that the knowledge also by stakeholders that this particular arrangement is in place sends to send the message home that, look, if you do something untoward,
freeways or expressways, could be mitigated where you have some perimeter security arrangement. When are we going to get to that level?
Well, it will take some time, let me admit, because our experience shows that, like in the last Anambra governorship election that we conducted, there were people who took off from the southwest and were crossing over to Anambra, masquerading themselves as observers, and they were apprehended in Imo State on their way to come to Anambra to disrupt the elections. So long as we have these kinds of incidents, we have to live with the discomfort of lockdowns. So we the stakeholders, when I say stakeholders, apart from INEC, the security agencies, the political parties, the candidates need to do the needful. They need to appreciate that you don't need to hire thugs from one part of the country to the other to disrupt elections in order to win. The way to go is to go out and sell your agenda out there to the electorate instead of resorting to this kind of chicanery.
All right, thank you very much, Mr. Nick Dazang. We have tweets coming in. Our viewers are taking advantage of our Twitter handle at NTAGMN. And of course, as we read the tweets, would also like you to address some issues that our viewers would be talking about. The very first one is from Nasiru Shamu. He says, a vote of confidence on APC Nigeria, Buhari, an improvement conduct from INEC, and a wise decision by the people of Ondo.
And then we have this from Shitu 10. Shitu 10 says, a good sign. It shows
INEC, but this is one election where, of course, from the tweets some of the tweets I've read now, some people feel that INEC, wasn't really fair to the candidate of the PDP. But then moving on, how do you think, the people could have more confidence in INEC and then in the process itself?
Well, let me start with the first issue you raised. I don't know how fair INEC could have been. We issued this timetable and schedule of activities, like I said, 6 months ago. We did not inspire or cause the crisis in the PDP. If anything, INEC consciously tried to impress on the PDP to put his house in order, because we know the implication of a house divided against itself. And the PDP itself is a member of the Inter-Party Advisory Council. And before now, the Inter-Party Advisory Council, IPAC, was divided down the middle with two factions. It was our Alternative Dispute Resolution department that brought the two warring factions together, and now we have one IPAC, which means the PDP itself, which is a member of IPAC, knows of the capacity of INEC to resolve these kinds of disputes. Not only that, we have other mechanisms outside INEC. We have chartered mediators out there that if you don't feel sufficiently confident in our own ADR department, we can refer you to. We have also in this country eminent persons that INEC has summoned who have graciously intervened in disputes. This will be the second that will happen. I think there was one during the 2015 general elections, and but increasingly we have recognized the need to collaborate, especially with the Navy and the police too, as a marine department, and we work with them, and that has also mitigated the incidents, the mishaps would have, I think they would have been on the upsurge, but the efforts of the Navy and the Marine Police have also, helped us significantly. In time past, we used to have worse incidents, than this. But going forward, we'll continue to collaborate with them to mitigate these kinds of accidents, because for us, all lives in INEC matter. We regret whenever these things happen. You cannot replace life. And when you call people to national service, you must also make provision to make sure that their lives are protected. So we regret that.
All right, but just before we let you go, the Rivers rerun is just around the corner. What lessons are there for us to learn, especially from the Ondo election, just with the Rivers rerun?
I think one of the key lessons to learn is that when the stakeholders comport themselves well, they don't issue inflammatory statements, they don't resort to violence ahead of the election. It helps the process, as we have seen in Ondo State. I was in Ondo several times before the election, and one thing that was remarkable was the civility with which the candidates canvassed for votes. They did not issue inflammatory statements. They did not accuse each other in bellicose terms. So we need to carry this attitude towards the Rivers election. One of the challenges
we've always... Are you saying that the politicians conducted themselves properly?
Yes. In fact, one of the challenges we've been having with Rivers is that each time we set out to conduct elections there, the politicians, I'm sorry to say, resort to statements that don't help the process. And you also see violence taking place before and during the election. We have
strong men. Please vote Opposition Party 2.
And the final one is from Umar Sami. Umar Sami tweets, "Congrats, Mr. Rotimi, but my question is, can he deliver his land?"
All right. Well, these are questions not meant for Nick Gazan to respond to. Opinions of our viewers who've been listening to our take on the outcome of the Ondo governorship election. Mr. Nick Gazan, Deputy Director of Publicity, INEC, would like to thank you for being part of our program this morning.
Thank you for having me.
Okay, we'll take a short break. When we return, we'll be dealing with the legacy of Fidel Castro.
Change is here and it's going to stay. Change begins with you. Oh yeah, make we go. Go to so let the change begin from within. Look at you, oh Gerula. Change begins with you and me. Oh, change begins with me. Oh, change begins with me. Oh, change begins with me.
Brother, that's Raul, of course, still now president of Cuba. Over the weekend, Fidel Castro passed on at the age of 90. Our correspondent, Oyebi Ajayi, as a background to our conversation this morning, gives us a brief of the instrumental, and some will say influential leader of Cuba.
Cuba's former president Fidel Castro died at the age of 90. Castro led a rebel army to victory in Cuba, embraced Soviet-style communists, and defied the power of 10 United States presidents during his half-century rule. The Cuban legend's death was announced at 10 p.m. on Friday by his younger brother and the president of Cuba, Raul Castro. Castro's reign over the island nation was marked by the U.S.-backed Bay of Pigs invasion in 1961 and the Cuban Missile Crisis a year later that brought the world to the brink of nuclear war. The bearded revolutionary, who survived a crippling U.S. trade embargo as well as dozens, possibly hundreds, of assassination plots, died 10 years after ill health forced him to hand power over to Raul. Castro overcame imprisonment at the hands of dictator Fulgencio Batista, exile in Mexico, and this system he had built. Fidel Castro was born August 13, 1926 in eastern Cuba's sugar country, where his Spanish immigrant father worked first recruiting labor for U.S. sugar companies and later built up a prosperous plantation of his own.
The American. In fact, he praised the people of the United States and described them as good people. I think what happened over the time, and I'm sure you know the history of a struggle to overthrow the regime using peasant farmers. I think the fact that he did what he did, or should I put it this way, to give a background, that Cuba, particularly Havana, before Fidel Castro, was a playground of American rich and famous. In fact, it was after the revolution that the guys moved all their businesses, including the mafia, and founded Las Vegas. So you can have a clear picture that it's the casinos, the hotels, entertainment, everything, So he did not actually expel the Americans per se. If you look at one of the great movies that was made on the revolution, I think the title was The Last Flight from Havana. You will see that when he got to the airport, on the day of the revolution, when he entered Havana, he got to the airport and there was this frightful crowd of rich and people so scared that this hot-headed revolutionary will kill everybody. He just said to, look, you guys can go if you want to go. And subsequently, of course, for so many reasons, he nationalized American businesses and interests in the United States and led a revolution in this world that was not a dictator. The great leader of Singapore, there are those who will tell you that he achieved what he achieved in Singapore at the cost of human lives. So this is what we need. We need to put everything in perspective and appreciate the circumstances in which he ruled Cuba for 50 years.
Well, we'll come back to you, Ambassador Keshi, where there are other two guests we have here. Professor Ochuli. This is a man who is gone. Yes. So let's get your take on what you consider to be the legacy of Fidel Castro against the background of diplomatic rows with the U.S. as well as whatever else he did around the world, particularly in Africa.
I think Ambassador Keshi has done an excellent job of giving a panoramic view of Fidel, especially in the face of very cynical propaganda that the American media and to some extent BBC has been carrying trying to demonize him. I think we have to take into account the fact that these were a group of brilliant young students from rich families who were the kind of people who would want to go into hotels and entertainment places as young people and witness the humiliation of Cuban women by these rich Italian mafia types and the contempt that they had for Cubans. And I imagine that his own father would have been also complaining about how these people treat even people like him who are now rich and so on. And so from very early, he would have imbibed this hostility to those who oppress others. And when they tried an adventurous revolution and it failed, and they fled to Mexico. From Mexico, they started plotting what to do, how to come and take power. And when they arrived, I mean, only 20 of them survived out of 80. They were being ambushed. The CIA had leaked information about their leaving Mexico for Havana, for Cuba. Those of them that survived, they went into the mountains, and we should assume that they took a lot of time to work out their chances of success, what attitude to adopt towards the Americans. 55 doctors, nurses, and technicians to go and help the Algerians in 1961. In 1963, he sent in 700 troops to help Algeria fight against Moroccan, hostility. By the time, 1965, he was in Guinea-Bissau, sent in doctors to Guinea-Bissau, supported Guinea-Bissau with ammunitions and so on. And what Ambassador Kessy just said is, but they are going into Angola in 1975, when it was very clear that the South Africans were heading for capturing Angola, Luanda, the capital of Angola, and preventing the MPLA, Movement for the Popular Liberation of Angola, from taking power, because they thought these are communists. These people are going to be sympathetic to the African National Congress. They will be sympathetic to SWAPO, the Southwest African People's Organization, and that will mean that South Africa will be the next target so let's go and seize and colonize, and the Americans encouraged it. So the Cubans took this decision that no, we must go and support MPLA. And between January 1975 and 76, they were in Angola, and they took this historic decision in 1986 to come and really blast the South Africans and force them out of Angola, which they did until they almost got to the Namibian border.
All right, thank you very much, Professor Chuli. But then let's speak to some of the issues.
Poor, but became rich. In a word, he was from a rich family, very comfortable family. He could have chosen to be part and parcel of the crowd in Havana and enjoy himself. He was very well educated, but he did not. He decided that, look, he needed to be on the side, particularly of the peasant sugarcane farmers. And as he rightly pointed out, and I think this is what makes leaders great. This was a guy who just utilized farmers, mostly, to overthrow a whole-fledged military. In fact, I remember one day in my days in the University of Ibadan, going to see one of my lecturers, and I saw lots of sleepers in front of his office. And I knocked and I went in. And there he was, teaching farmers that we call Agbekoya, the theory of revolution. And, Comrade Olaoni, and guess who he was using to inspire, to talk to the farmers about taking control of their lives? He was using Fidel Castro because of the influence, the inspiration that this guy, and the imagination that, that he brought into.
Chile, this is a fact that you know very well. Under Fidel Castro, Cuba had one of the highest literacy rates in the world. No question about that, just to illustrate the point you're making. But let's bring it back to Africa. What should Africa remember Fidel Castro for? Professor Chile was already going to the liberation struggle, and Ambassador Keshi also had touched on that. Let's explore this a bit more. The role in Angola, the knock-on effect on Namibia, and then also the domino effect finally on 1994 when the walls of apartheid crumbled. Ambassador Keshi.
No, we should remember him for the great role he played in, in the country. Not just military personnel, but educationists and health officials for this continent. I think we should remember him for that.
How much, Professor Okelo Chile, let's again to illustrate the role that Fidel Castro played in Africa. In your estimation, how much of a risk did he undertake? I'd like you to answer this question against the background of his role in Angola, for instance. In northern Angola, you had Jonas Savimbi. Jonas Savimbi was being backed by Mobutu Sese Seko, again through the Americans. And then from the south, you had
taking some action. So it was clear that what Castro had to do was mind himself, mind the actions of the Americans, and where was I going? See to it that. Have I lost my line of thinking?
Professor, no. Castro is a very complicated fellow.
Yes, Castro was complicated leader. Yes, but the point I was trying to make is that
he took a great risk. Let's just put it.
That is the risk element. So look, he confronted the Americans in northern Angola against Jonas Savimbi, and in the south he confronted the South Africans and defeated the South Africans. And ultimately, of course,
he didn't actually completely defeat the South Africans. But that is why the 1988 negotiations came in with the South Africans, the Americans, the Angolans, and the Cubans taking part in London. Because he could only push the South Africans all the way toward the Namibian border. And for 10 years, they were at this stalemate. Until in 1986, they decided that later...
people. And they took the risk.
It's 11 million now.
It's ahead to... Okay. They took the risk to extend help against... Bear in mind at that time, the characters that ruled the United States. They felt mighty, they felt they could use military might at any given time against anybody. And so for him to open up a new battlefront, I think was a very great risk.
Well, Ambassador Joe Keshi, earlier when you spoke, you said, when we talk about revolution, there's some things as a leader and steps you'd have to take. Of course, the world will criticize. Fidel Castro, when the name is mentioned, of course, lots of controversies, trail that name. But then, the question is this. Looking at the things that are being, said about him, would you say... Is there anything like too much mistake? Some people have said that he made too many mistakes to achieve the things that he achieved. But could that be said to be too much mistake?
Absolutely, absolutely. Look, every leader makes perhaps one big mistake at some point in time. And he did. I mean, let's be honest about this. He did. But here's my take. As I said, referring to that movie, which, took part of the shots that were taken on the day he got to Havana. If he wanted to execute people on the day he got into Havana, he could have done that. He could have picked all these rich guys and people, government officials running away from Havana. He could have picked them and executed them for what they did to the poor people. He did not. At some point in his... And yet we are going through economic crisis. Every bust we have crisis. For 50 years, this guy has managed to hold that country together, showing you that he built a resilient society that was able to withstand all what was thrown at his nation. So he made mistakes. So we must recognize that also.
I think, we should also note something which was noted about Rhodesia. When Ian Smith grabbed power and they threw an embargo against Smith, one of the things that Professor Johan Galtung found out was that because of the embargo, the whites in Zimbabwe became very creative. A lot of patents to sell. They've invented so many things that they would market, and they would become very prosperous if the blockage was lifted. And again, the whole question of, this medical tourism. Yes. Americans flying to India to do dental care, and it is cheaper to fly to India and back than to go and do dental care with an American doctor. Now, if Cuba was available, as you were saying, the medical care in Cuba was available, the American Medical Association along the way. So at the last minute, he would change his route, and they would miss him. I'm not so sure how he escaped that explosion of cigars that they put explosives in the cigar to blow him up. How he did it, I have no idea. But that issue of creativity is something which, he was a genius. There's no question about that. And I suspect that when it comes to questions of assassination, it is one brilliant group against another brilliant group. His own intelligence people would have been working overdrive, like the American intelligence operatives would have been working overdrive to catch him.
All right, thank you very much, Professor Ocholi. Ambassador Keshi, finally, I'd like to know from you. Although Fidel Castro has been out of power for some time now, his brother Raul took over, but some people have said, okay, he's had some influence. Some have said, no, he's not had. What will a Cuba without Fidel Castro look like? What are we likely to see in the coming years? Are we seeing the Western influence? Are we going to see that coming back, or?
Yeah, to a large extent, we need to realize that in the last 50 years, the world has changed and has changed dramatically before us. So you should expect that the people of Cuba are part of the global.
In the health sector in Cuba to protect lives may have erased his mistakes. Even the U.S. seeks for Cuban doctors.
And then we have this from Ibenemer Dominic. He says, Fidel Castro, like Gaddafi, was a benevolent dictator that had the interests of his people at heart. He was a true leader.
Mike Anyako tweets, successors to Fidel Castro's legacies should open their country to the outside world.
Abdullahi Onishabi says via tweet, Fidel Castro can never be forgotten as a symbol of stiff resistance to world powers, particularly the USA.
Ortega tweets, Fidel Castro's death marked the best legacies of a man who believes in freedom of the poor and a say for the voiceless.
Olusegun Dosunmu, Castro was a true hero amongst his own people and, of course, Africans. I'm glad he was able to witness the end of the feud with America.
And of course, this one, Ortega tweets again, there is a good reason for every freedom lover to celebrate this great man, Fidel Castro.
Abraham Victor tweets, a great leader can use any available resource to do great things rather than complaining. Fidel Castro proved it. And
Olusegun Dosunmu tweets again, I think I'm enjoying the freedom history class we all are having. Thanks to everyone in the studio. Fidel Castro was a gem to the Cubans.
Again, Ortega says, revolution is not a bed of roses. Revolution is a struggle.
Tweets coming in from Nigerians. It's very interesting that actually there are other perspectives that the world must know, not just one-sided, perspective from the Western media. So we pray that NTA will go global, very global as one of these days.
Indeed, Ambassador Keshi, we are global. I mean, the program Good Morning Nigeria is uploaded every day on YouTube, and then we have viewers who also send their comments from important capitals.
And we're streaming live.
And we're also streaming live, so we have